Would you like to find yourself in a world where the zombie apocalypse has finally overtaken you, at the same time becoming undead, retaining your consciousness and all your knowledge? The main character had this opportunity, but by using his knowledge and skills, he managed to become much stronger and more powerful. The T genome spread throughout the city at incredible speed. The Ministry of Defense was unable to cope with its task. City F didn't last too long. It seemed like someone was controlling the mysterious curse by buying resistance to it. The virologist and team sent by the government were destroyed, and hope in the eyes of people gradually faded. While the heroes were fighting for their existence, the whole world was ready to say goodbye to them. Such is the fate of the antagonist. The special squad consisted of more than 10 people, but now the group had been reduced to 7 members, which was still more than enough. It was necessary to get to the roof. Leon Kennedy was still on the way, so there was no hope for help. In one of the rooms of the building, which was considered a hearth, the main character carried his own sister, a little girl, on his back. The baby was scared but seemed to have immunity, apparently using the Konami code for this. The girl had an excellent chance of salvation. Perhaps it was a gift from God, their foray could be successful. But the enemy was not going to just wait for his defeat. They were not smart like the homunculi and their father. However, thanks to their numerical advantage and lack of fear, they could push anyone in their path without worrying about the little things. It was worth hurrying to the roof, because the baby is humanity's last chance to prevent everyone from becoming apostles of the hand. Leaving his nakama, the boy rushed to the roof. His partner did not allow him to succumb to emotions and make a terrible mistake. Standing alone against hundreds of wickedness, her friend could confidently compare in toughness with Alucard. But this was not her finale. The main character continued to look into the glass, realizing that he could do absolutely nothing in this situation. Soon the squad was defeated. The young man remembered his experience playing Dying Light 2 inches and decided to become more mobile to increase safety. The baby cried a lot because all her friends remained there, but our young man understood that under no circumstances should he return. The guy tried to console the girl, but it was more difficult than giving people hope in Frostpunk 2. The roof to which the guy moved was filled with hordes of monsters. It was necessary to quickly come up with a plan. The main character did not master Bankai, but now his Reiatsu had definitely reached the captain's level. He promised to protect the girl. After a few tens of minutes, the roof was completely cleared of the creatures of this curse, even if it was a small part. Next, the young man wanted to use the elevator. He clearly hadn't watched enough zombie movies because it was a bad idea. Changqian wanted her savior to help as many people as possible. She hoped to help everyone. Ready to go to the end, the little girl could not even imagine how lucky she was that Shu Tucker was not in this world. The young man encouraged the brave little girl, saying that thanks to her help, they would be able to save this world. It was impossible to give up, but a dangerous task lay ahead of them. But this was better than meeting Atom Smasher. After some time, the guys were still able to get to the bridge. The military held the line against the monsters. But no one saw them as saviors. Red lights appeared on the young man's body. He regretted that he had not invented a potion that would grant the abilities of Obito Uchiha. To identify himself, the boy shouted loudly that his name was Ye Nan. He was a scientist and had brought samples. The symptoms did not appear immediately. Waiting 3 hours was too long. They did not want to take time off from the Battle Royal battle. There was no hope. It seems that the desire to help humanity turned out worse for the guy and his partner. They didn't believe the guy, because according to official data, Ye Nan had already died. There were no necromancers in their world, so it was impossible. The young man was 90% sure that he could cope with creating the potion, but as The Last of Us tells, little girls often get into trouble. After which, with a precise shot from Car 98K, Ye Nan was also incapacitated, and an eclipse began for all of humanity. The news that the scientist was sent to Elizabeth and the Angels spread across the internet. People were divided into different groups. One of the program experts said that with a high probability the young man was not bluffing. He actually found antibodies. But it quickly became clear that the world government is not on the guy's side. They don't need such a pawn with a philosopher's stone. The military planned to destroy the bridge. Just like in that mission from Dead Island, it was necessary to evacuate in 10 minutes. Destroying the crossing was supposed to slow down the spread of this curse. It was too dangerous. Ye Nan fell into the water and soon found himself on an island. The raft with a hook for catching garbage could not be found. The young man lying on the sand was attacked by ravens, but he was not Prometheus, so he fought back the impudent bird. The main character could not believe that he was still alive. His eyes turned red and his hair turned white. The young man's heart did not beat, and his hands were cold, but even so he did not plan to join Anteku. Looking around, the ghoul noticed Changqian lying down. He hurried to check if she was okay. All the signs suggested that now they would meet only at the end of the road, although the guy would rather meet Doom Guy. The military man watching the main character through binoculars laughed at the zombie, thinking that he was sad because of hunger. Yanan understood that his story of revenge was beginning right now, in which he would show all the offenders where their place was. The young man dressed up. The things weren't straight from the factory, but that didn't matter. He took the girl with him. Perhaps he will be able to find a way to bring her back in the future. It seems that now even eternity is not the limit. City F, where all the actions began, was considered completely evacuated. They clearly did not want to save anyone. The surviving people quickly lost hope, but the biters had no weaknesses. They were not afraid of the light and could not be defeated with one blow. Under the cover of darkness, people worried about their loved ones, not imagining that they would be saved by the one who was going to become Hokage. Teenagers sitting on the shore of one of the other cities were talking about the events that had happened. The kids loved taking pictures, especially if they were accompanied by a fictional story about Ed and Lorraine Warren. According to the news, it was impossible to become a zombie through water, so the guys were confident in their safety. One of the boys was a talented scientist. Roy Mustang had still not found him, so he planned to advance alone. Earlier, the brunette read an article by Yanan about how monster cells can become raw materials for evolution. The young man was a biology student, so curiosity got the better of him. He didn't even know how much he was mistaken. Meanwhile, the city of F became like a wasteland, a landscape taken from the third Fallout, no less. There was even a share of romance in this. Yanan made his way to the laboratory, hoping that he could figure out how to bring Changqian back. But even though the young man became a zombie, it is unlikely that he will be accepted as one of their own. It would be worth following the advice of the film Zombieland. You can't have too many different survival tools, especially when you're traveling alone. But after breaking the window of a nearby abandoned store, the monsters simply walked past the young man. He couldn't believe it. He didn't have a list of 100 things he had to do, but it looked like he would have plenty of time. The main character was not an expert from the gun ranch, but he knew a few things about different guns. Perhaps now his enemies are not zombies, but this whole system, until it was not known exactly what would happen next. Meanwhile, a group of survivors moving forward in search of supplies also came across Timmy and Dolores, as well as a crowd of monsters. Today, the number of enemies was significantly higher. The guys had no idea what exactly was the reason for this. The battle was difficult. A couple of guys were bitten. It was worth at least putting on armor made of plastic bottles, as armchair critics usually advise. Having completed the cleanup, the company noticed the main character leaving the building in full gear. The young man's appearance did not resemble a human, so they did not know whether to accept this cosplayer as Kaoru Nagisa as an enemy or not. The young man planned to go further on his business, but these raiders seemed to want to get some fresh gear. It's in vain, because the guy's SMG skills were upgraded at SS. It's not in vain that he fought on par with the military who protected him. Yanan was called out by one of the survivors. What was strange was that the dead did not pay attention to him at all. The main character was talking about how many similar groups remained in the closed city. It seemed that the government did not know the history of the city of Haran. The young man cared little about who and what they thought about him. He deftly knocked down his opponent, pretending that he was not imitating Caveira. He was interested in where these raiders got their oxygen masks from. The men had no choice but to answer. The masks were supplied by the main group from the center. It was worth seeing them. Maybe there would be something useful there. They tried to talk to the young man in order to dull his vigilance, but the rebirth buffed all his characteristics. It's a pity they didn't give him any loot. Coping with a gang of robbers was not much of a problem. The guy would quickly extinguish the riot, and his brothers would continue the work. The fact that the zombies ignored the young man was a big plus, because it made it much easier to move around the city. The ill-fated building was a citadel where the guy lost everything. Becoming the Lich King, he was ready to lead Ice Crown. The bodies of his comrades were still inside. It was worthwhile to see them off with honors, even though the guy was not a cleric. The young man decided to avenge the captain. It seemed that the zombies were neutral towards him. As soon as he got involved in a fight, they all attacked at once. In the man's hand was an unusual map. It was a building plan. It seemed that the experienced soldier was very perceptive. There is a possibility that their squad also had a secret mission, not a quest with a helicopter in a construction site, but it seemed too difficult. One way or another, these people helped Yanan out. He couldn't turn away from them so easily once he checked the marked place. The main mission was to destroy one room. If it wasn't Rick's garage, then it was all in vain. Having risen to the right place, the young man was faced with the fact that the smell was simply terrible. No one had come here for a long time. It looks like this is another research laboratory of the Umbrella Corporation, testing something on local rodents. But who and what was used was still a mystery to the main character. Once you were on your guard, everything was mysterious. Moving deeper into the room, it became clear that quite recently there had been someone alive here. It's a pity that there was no sensor nearby. Young Hatake Kakashi came across the body of a scientist. Even though he had turned a long time ago, he had only recently come to rest. In his hands was a scalpel, Probably this is the same scientist working on a top-secret project. A strange noise was coming from behind a door nearby. Perhaps Champion Gundyr would appear now. In the current situation, even this should not have been surprising. Having opened the doors, the ninja noticed that two military men were conducting an interrogation. The young man decided to interrupt them in order to get the truth. The opponents were neutralized quickly, a skill he acquired only recently when he turned undead. The two people planned to eliminate their target, but the young man played the presidential defense simulator for a reason, so he made it in time. Apparently, the woman was so important that they were willing to sacrifice themselves to complete the mission. The main character helped a new friend. There was a door ahead. It was worth calling the guys in masks. They are specialists in opening such doors. Next to this metal door, there was a huge amount of military supplies. It was unusual, even suspicious. What does this descent into the secret room hide? It would be too good if there were just big chests there. It seems that behind this door there was something that the country's authorities were diligently trying to hide and destroy. The secure safe door gave way surprisingly easily. Perhaps the guy had chosen the wrong profession for himself before. In front of the main character there was a strange device covered in green energy. Probably there were the consciousnesses of mice. There was also a parrot sitting not far from the flask. He recognized Dr. Yanan, but something was definitely wrong with this bird. The creature straight from the Call of Pripyat frightened and amazed at the same time. It somehow knew the name of the young man. A little later, the pirate's companion explained that he was using the body of a bird to transmit a signal. It was not a real body. A biological communication device. The slurry inside was similar to a mutagen. Perhaps he could create his own squad of ninja turtles. The parrot began to repeat the same sentence. He asked to go to the laboratory of Qingjiang University. It was there that the guy should have waited for answers. And there were many of them, although it was worth asking the wish fulfiller to save the girl. The young man did not do this. Having received a tip, the main character was ready to move on. He was not alive, and therefore fatigue was unknown to him. The guy was stopped by the very girl he saved, the reincarnation of Dante and Trish, no less. The brunette doesn't give the guy a chance to refuse. Hearing Yanan's voice, the beauty quickly recognized him as the professor, although his appearance had changed a lot. Chen Yue was a fan of the guy, and how quickly he realized that the girl was not a threat struck her doubly. As soon as the boy made a remark, the brunette quickly corrected herself. He examined the military man's body for the presence of an X4 site. Judging by the uniform as well as equipment, the soldiers were sent from another country. A group of 4 stars was definitely seen here. It was impossible to relax after all. The game over could come at any moment. You had to be vigilant. They don't have any special power to search for enemies in the area. They might not be the only ones sent for the parrot. While the main character was looking for useful information, his new friend saw something strange in the layer between her clothes. The piece of paper found was not a treasure map or instructions for materializing plumices, but just a scientist's pass. However, it can still be useful. Chen Yue said that these are used at Qingjiang University. It seems that the answers are really hidden there, but it was worth finding out why the girl played the role in the film The Transporter. The beauty explained that the attackers needed a special password from the underground research center of Qingjiang University. Yanan asked if anyone else knew the password, but the brunette was the only one worth playing tavern defense. At least until the moment the young man receives the numbers necessary to enter, he has already come up with a plan. The password, just like SteamGuard, changes every time, but the last change took place with the participation of a girl. It turns out that only she can get into this secret lair. She was eager to investigate what led to the end of the city of F. The brunette insisted that the main character take her with him, but even Satoru Gojo could not protect Riko. But it was impossible to get to the lower tier of the laboratory without the beauty. You would have to agree to her conditions in order to move forward. Realizing that she would be a burden to him, Chen Yue told the combination of numbers. Yanan was grateful. Since the main character was a ghoul, he did not need regular food. He gave the supplies to the girl and also shared his equipment. He didn't have a level 3 helmet, but what he gave him would definitely help in the conditions that the girl would encounter on the way out. The girl was worried about the professor, but he explained that if after 6 days the beauty was fine, it would mean that he had succeeded. As soon as the young man got into the elevator and began to descend, Chen Yue said that all these years she had followed his will. All the cars were damaged. It turns out Project Zomboid is a fairly realistic game, but who could do it? The laboratory was located as much as 20 kilometers from this place. The path was long. Fortunately, the zombies did not pay attention. Meanwhile, in the alleys, the remaining survivors traded and built a new empire. Apparently, someone was seriously preparing for such an outcome. A man in rags came to his elder, asking him for some food and a gas mask in exchange for goods. A traveling merchant in a cloak from Part 4 of Resident Evil prepared a valuable product. His boss liked the quality. However, the food they received would hardly last for a couple of days, and besides, their brotherhood no longer needed such things. Inside this secret order of survivors, many unfortunate people gathered. They were waiting for the moment when someone would save them. Because of what happened, society rolled back many centuries in terms of moral standards. Now it was difficult to survive alone. On the corner of one of the streets in the city of F, there was a multi-story building. Several cars stood nearby, and Batman's spotlight stood on the roof. At the wheel of the van were several people from that same brotherhood. They went out on a sortie, carrying out the commander's tasks. The guys noticed that the main character was moving in their direction. It's a pity that the young man did not receive spider sense after receiving the curse. It didn't matter who was on the street. The head forbade anyone to go out in search of food once they figured it out. It was necessary to act, but the guys didn't even know kung fu. They couldn't fight in close combat. Remembering all his experience playing strategy, one of the raiders decided to use the van to attack the wanderer. Hearing the sound, Yanan was a little surprised. It seems that the goddess of luck is on his side today, since everything is going like this. The robbers believed that they really had a chance, but the guy saw the trajectory of the bullet even without the system. Thanks to his reaction, the boy will be able to not only dodge, but also make 2 game overs to his opponents at once. It would have been worth acting more carefully. The car would not have been damaged, and besides, it would have been worth cheating the guys who couldn't get into the zone. All the raiders they met wore masks. It was strange, but perhaps in this way they distinguished their own from strangers. With the help of his fellow zombies, Yanan quickly received the necessary information. The territory was under control. It was necessary to use his talent of persuasion a little, and the young man easily repaid the effort spent on leveling up. There were 8 people in the organization, and their main base was in an office nearby. Maybe it's worth getting some chimichangas. The amount of fuel was modest. It was foolish to hope to find it in this area, but there should have been a lot of it at the base. At the entrance, the leader was already waiting for his guys, but he still did not know what surprise was prepared for him. The fact that his subordinates returned so quickly meant either incredible success or failure. The man had not rolled 20 on a dice for a long time. The building was well protected. Yanan decided to improvise. He quickly entered the building using the strength and durability of the machine. Meanwhile, inside the base, a bearded man came to an inspection due to replenishment. He was looking for a new person. The girl was very scared, but unfortunately, she did not have any perk to give her an advantage when escaping. The senior in rank was torn from receiving payment for the roof over his head by other raiders who spoke about what had happened. They planned to leave all the inhabitants of this dark place as bait so that they would have time to escape. However, the main character arrived in time to help, accurately delivering a headshot to the dead man. Like a real Rambo, the boy led the group to safety while the bandits planned to escape in a second car. But the Lord of the Dead overtook them first. Before they could do anything, a battle between evil and even greater evil lay ahead. After a few tens of minutes, everything was over. Yanan led the girls and children outside the fortress. Everyone was grateful to him for his help, but he is not a hero, but a punisher who will chain evil in hell. Having said his pathetic speech, the boy left for the university, hoping to quickly find out the reason for all this devastation. The powers that be discussed the possibility of studying the curse that struck the city of F. It was worth demolishing some buildings. The Round Table was not sure that they were not in too much of a hurry. The company of 4 stars was dangerous, but there would be a night raid on them too. It was not possible to make a decision unanimously this time, so the representatives decided to hold a vote. Many spoke out in support of this decision, deciding to make the city of F a testing ground for various weapons and inventions. But only the representative of modern conglomerates seemed to be smarter than the bread in this crowd. There was still hope. There were many survivors inside the city, and it made no sense to repeat the plot with a smiley face burned on the house. Demolition of the city is a simple and quick solution, but not at all suitable for their situation. They should have thought better. The 4-star company continued to insist that besides zombies, the only people left in the city were cockroaches. But the voice of reason of the entire Round Table reminded who financed the experts that they had decided that there would be no people. After listening to the position of a person who definitely thinks before speaking, others also began to doubt. The votes were evenly divided, so they decided to postpone the decision to play Worms Armageddon in real life. Meanwhile, the city of F, despite the opinion of politicians, continued to breathe, albeit through a straw. The zombies did not know how to parkour, so most of the survivors hid on the roofs of buildings awaiting evacuation. Military drones were flying towards the people. Everyone was sure that the country had not abandoned its citizens. But the American dream was not allowed to come true. The 4-star company decided to clean up the areas, nothing more. Even the senior mate doubted the actions of his boss. People are protesting. The situation is becoming more and more complicated. The man was confident that he was doing everything right. There was no need to worry about the opinions of those who knew nothing. One of the buildings was familiar to the man. There was a hideout there. It would be nice to make it a lair for Freddy Krueger. The man's allies also did not sit still and continued to promote their decision, doing everything to make it seem right. The building chosen for demolition was the same Qingjiang University. It was worth hurrying, although Yan'an did not know about it yet. The concrete jungle turned out to be not such an easy place. The main character, like Bear Grylls, made his way forward. The institute building itself was damaged quite badly, but the underground levels seemed to have remained intact. The guy had no idea what answers lay ahead, but if there was a transformation circle there, it would be nice. Following Yan'an, Chen Yiwei also drove up to the institute. She did not want to leave the professor in this terrible place. In addition, as soon as a girl appears here, the feeling of fear intensifies 100 times. It's a coincidence, or a basilisk is waiting for them from below. The beauty quickly reached the descent to the lower floors. It looks like she was ready for this journey. But after a moment, the whole staircase and walls seemed to come to life, writhing like a snake that is aimed at its prey. As if someone's evil Nen had invaded this place. Taking a step forward meant giving up hope. It was too decisive. The girl was not ready for this. Something terrible was happening within the walls of this building, but something did not fully add up. Inconsistencies in her memory suggested that either an alien parasite had appeared in her environment, or her memory had been erased earlier. Chen Yiwei could not find the strength to go down under the central. She was ready for different things, but not for this. Survivors were indeed hiding inside the institute, a creepy place with many devices. Perhaps dead cells were created here. The sounds coming from above frightened people, but at the same time inspired hope. They continued to sit near the stairs. There were a lot of dead people around, but the survivors were as careless as the panda po, because they almost broke the test tube. If this happened, the likelihood of their mission failing would be too high. Good thing they had a good Libra with them. The resources hidden within the walls of this university will last for more than a year. You just have to find this paradise. The entrance was blocked. Perhaps it was necessary to go through the puzzle like Leon in order for it to open, but the guys preferred to find another way. The group moved slowly, hoping not to encounter anything terrible, but something came towards them. At the same time, the main character was able to get inside using the code he had received earlier. Everything was fine. The only thing that bothered the young man was the surveillance camera, which was too active, either Skynet or people. Perhaps Yan'an is being watched by the one who called him here. At least the young man himself thought so. Even without the help of artifacts, our stalker reached the depths of the complex. A terrible sound came from the last door. The white-haired man hurried to check when he suddenly noticed the same group that had encountered the zombie dog. Unlike ordinary monsters, this monster was fast and strong. Its instincts were visible, and it was a dangerous opponent. Dangerous, but not for someone who can, like Hawkeye, catch an arrow with his bare hand. Yan'an quickly defeated the mutant. One of the women was in a laboratory uniform. Perhaps she could help in the search. She was worth protecting. This is a priority mission. In turn, the woman looked at the guy with incomprehension, as if instead of a person she saw him as a mixture of a Kudan and a mermaid. But the dog was not alone. She came to this turn with her friends who were waiting around the corner. The entire squad of monsters attacked the young man, but in just a second he was able to use his bankai and return the blade back. The skills of the undead greatly impressed the survivors. They could not cope with one, but this guy dealt with 10. Realizing that they had no chance of getting out of such situations on their own, the group began spamming invites. The laboratory employee offered Yan'an to receive a share of the supplies for the escort, but the guy was too busy with the documentation. It looks like the various tests weren't just done on rats. There might even be something like Pyramid Head involved. The country's leadership was very worried about this curse, but those who absorbed it completely can benefit from it. The brunette continued to insist that the main character support them during the adventure. Yan'an agreed to guide this bunch of noobs through the dungeon, but everyone was obliged to obey him, otherwise there would be no sacrifices. The white-haired man's words seemed more than convincing. No one planned to disobey his command. Gradually moving through the dungeon, the guys were surprised because they did not meet anyone, not even armor with an attached soul. The main character was not stupid, so he quickly understood where everything was heading. Besides, GRE in the game did the same. His guesses were confirmed when he heard a conversation between two military men. They were discussing the possibility of returning to the city. Now the survivors had to cope with all the hardships on their own. They had to be grateful that Nemesis was not sent to them. Having reached the place, the boy easily opened the door, which had previously been resistant to the group. His assistant was surprised, thinking that he had escaped from Hogwarts, the only way to explain this magic. Even though the brunette worked in the laboratory, even she did not have the required level of access for this place. The main character explained that they should be quiet, otherwise some creature from the SCP Foundation will come for them. In addition, they had been being watched from the central zone for a long time, but the girl was sure that this was impossible. The brunette was in charge of security, so she is sure that no one could have been there. Apparently the girl didn't check all the zones. There was uncertainty ahead. It was worth staying close to Yan'an and being ready. Perhaps now they will have the honor of meeting someone worse than a zombie. The young man hoped not to meet the hand of God. As soon as the boy took a step, the door instantly slammed behind him. Usually this meant that a boss fight was ahead. At least this was the case in Dark Souls, which is worth only Ornstein and Smo, whose appearance took them by surprise. Someone in front called the young man. The voice was the same as that parrot with green energy. Before the young man there was something not of this world, definitely left by reptilians or some other race. In the green slurry, Krang was at minimum wage. His brain and two eyes were glad to meet the main character. Meanwhile, a search and rescue team rushed to the Institute. They wanted to evacuate survivors from the building. The small detachment moved forward in unison, ready to meet the enemy, even if the devil himself was in front of them. But the only one they came across was Chen Yi-wei. She was quickly recognized. Her uniform revealed that the girl was an employee of the Institute. The commander asked the girl not to worry and offered to go with them. They were ready to complete the mission no matter what. The man couldn't understand where the cursed dogs were, but the brunette didn't even understand what they were talking about. They're not playing prototype here, but the soldier explained that a pack of these monsters destroyed the previous squad of 30 people. Probably the scientist the girl is talking about couldn't cope with them. It was worth preparing for the worst. No one could believe that a scientist was capable of such a thing, but at one time many underestimated Dr. Freeman. Meanwhile, in the central part of the Institute, the main character continued his conversation with this creature from the flask. The brain in a jar, as if Thaumcraft had escaped from the mod, said that he saw everything from beginning to end, all the horrors of this disaster. The main character quickly realized that in front of him was the one who first encountered the curse. The special level cursed spirit was glad that he wouldn't have to explain too much, but there were still questions to discuss. The main reason that made this brain call the guy to the center of the Institute is that the infected wanted to find a body. Zombies did not have a will, but they had a body, and the situation for this mysterious mister was even worse. When the boy asked how he could help, the body said that he knew the law of existence and would help him find the answer to how to get his sister back. Yan'an watched Full Metal Alchemist and knew that there was no cure for death. He was a scientist and knew this for sure. The expression on the young man's face became colder and more insensitive with every second. He was ready to hear anything. The guy picked up the jar and the talking brain planned to share the information if the young man helped. However, the main character was not so stupid. He had his own view of this situation. He is still 4 Nosferatu. This was too little, so the guy was ready to take a bite. He is, after all, an undead. But the first damn one had no choice but to agree to the guy's conditions. Besides, the government was looking for him. From this, RL made 2 conclusions. He could make a deal with the government, and if he decides to help, he will become wanted. Moreover, this test tube monster could not provide a guarantee, so there was no point in agreeing. Yan'an almost left the room when suddenly his brain called out to him and asked what the guy wanted. First of all, the young man, of course, wanted a normal end to the attack on the Titans to study his new Nakama. Secondly, as compensation, the resurrection of the protagonist's sister had to happen right away. And the third and last point turned out to be too unexpected for the superintelligence. The guy wanted to learn how to return consciousness to the damned. The revenge he has prepared will not only need to be served cold, but the dish will be so large that he will need thousands of waiters. At that moment, the parasite realized that the person he had chosen was perfect for this mission. Yan'an understood that if he gave his body to this monster, the whole world would be covered by a huge dome of threat. This cannot be allowed, at least for now. Perhaps in the future it will become clearer what needs to be done. After some time, the young man came out through the doors. The whole group continued to wait for him. Even though his brain didn't have a shell now, he perfectly sensed the danger. Most likely Hextech technologies helped. There were many drones not far from the laboratory. A steel door could not withstand such power. The best solution was to hide deep into the shelter. Perhaps there it would be possible to open several hundred lids. The sensitivity of this creature was too high. He learned that there were 7 people in the complex, among whom could be Chen Yi-wei. The doors ahead were locked, so this creature, who had escaped from phasmophobia, had to prove himself by opening them. Meanwhile, many remote-controlled devices were located above the Qingjiang Institute. The company of 4 stars began to implement their plan. Soon they will be crushed by the power of the main character, even if they don't know about it yet. The rescue squad that made its way into the complex was in a hurry to get deeper in order to survive the impact. The password they received from headquarters turned out to be incorrect. There was no absolute shield to protect against the release. The situation was quite critical, but the captain did not plan to give up. Out of anger, the man hit the wall with his fist. A couple of moments later, the door ahead was opened. The captain thought that he was now Saitama, or at least Mob. With very little time left, the squad hurried to take refuge on the lower tier of the research laboratory. The door remained open. This could have caused many problems, but as soon as the super-strong captain turned around, it slammed shut. What was happening greatly worried the man. It seemed that on that day he had used up all his luck for this year. The doors opened again when it was necessary, Some considered it a miracle, but the girl knew that these were the tricks of Professor Ye. The drone attack severely destroyed the building, trapping many of the survivors of the curse under the rubble. The girl lost her parents shortly after the incident began. The speed of the cursed spirit spreading was faster than the running speed of Usain Bolt. Suddenly, a piece of darkness that fell on the wound caused a strong attack of power. It seemed that the curse not only gave debuffs. Shrouded in threads of strange energy, the girl seemed to be reborn. Something similar happened when Femto appeared. A few moments later, the baby's face changed greatly. It became similar to the face of the main character. There was considerable power hidden in her eyes, and the aura emanating from the girl as a whole was reminiscent of Bill's cipher. Just one attack was enough to deal with all the devices that were destroying the university. The girl flew into the sky like Alex Mercer. She was definitely in a hurry somewhere, but no one knew what was in her plans. In the underground laboratory, the young man began to conduct various experiments on this creature as they had agreed. It was necessary to understand whether it was worth swatting him now, like a fungus from Super Mario, or whether he was truly a reliable ally. It quickly became clear that the laboratory that had been built was hidden from the highest ranks. It was too mysterious. Apart from advanced technologies and terrible ideas, everything here seemed to have been taken from a ship from Star Wars. This laboratory may hold more secrets than expected if this is true. Then the situation is dire. It took very little time to make a potion that could actually turn a person into a witcher. This elixir allows you to awaken an unusual power, but if the body is not able to accept it, it will break down beyond repair. It is possible to resurrect Qian with this updated curse, but it is better to test it before doing so. The main character's partner was able to find a special zombie nearby, while the SSG hunt for ghouls continued outside. A representative of 4 Stars speaks to the public. He made it look like the released drones are needed for search operations. This should help find survivors if there are any left, but the results so far are pretty grim. With tears, the man who outsmarted even Kira in cunning talks about how difficult it is to admit that there are no uninfected people left in the city of F. He bowed and asked for forgiveness from relatives whose loved ones remained behind the walls, but the cleansing could no longer be postponed. People were also concerned that the search continues. Even though it was announced that there were no survivors, this is a big expense for the country's budget. Having gained the loyalty of the voters, the man was ready to move on to the next stage of his plan, not a philosopher's stone from the country, but still. The politician promised to hurry up and provide a detailed report before proceeding with the reconstruction and cleaning of the entire area. However, there were those who did not agree with the termination of the search mission. People could not be left in the lurch. But fortunately for the 4-Star Company, there were only a few such upstarts. You might not even notice them. Gradually, people divided into 2 camps. Some were for and some were against. This noise hid the real intentions of the villains. Corporations have become much more powerful than heads of state, especially ones as large as 4 Stars. The people's position changed. This was exactly what the man wanted. It seems that the used change of move from Uno helped. In fact, the cleansing of the territories from the remaining raiders and civilians continued. No one could be missed. The main character, being in his secret hideout, continued to discuss the details of his plan with the test tube monster. It turns out that the main character still has a chance, even if he is not a superhero, but he can definitely cope. It was worth carrying out the test as soon as possible, because if it is not so effective, adjustments will have to be made. Mutagen did not fully understand his new friend, but he promised to provide support, so he gave enlightenment on the necessary zombie. Such mutations that appeared without anyone's intervention are very rare. Perhaps this is a new species of human. The main character was well aware of the risks. He was ready to do everything to prevent a new blow, even without the spear of Langinius. Thanks to Resist, the guy is stronger than an ordinary person. He is still not on the level of Kayabe Akihiko, but he can already do something on his own. The guy needed new strength, so he decided to first use his development on himself to awaken hidden powers. This idea was inspired by Bioshock with its energy drinks. Perhaps he will be the strongest in the world after this. The main character, without even thinking for a second, sent the essence of awakening into his body. His partner warned him how difficult the procedure was. Giving up was not Yanan's style, so he decided to immediately inject himself with all the power at once, wanting to become better than Fantastic Four. The young man's girlfriend was nearby and heard a strange sound. She and the squad decided to check what was hiding there. The captain wanted to leave the girl behind, but if it was her friend, then she didn't care what everyone else thought. Moving forward, the squad met the girl from the laboratory and other survivors. It seemed that the captain's luck had not yet run out. Chen Yiwei asked if the professor had been seen here. The brunette understood who she was talking about and asked to follow her. The girl led the squad straight to the brain with eyes, hoping that the guy would be there, but this time they were unlucky. The captain thought that it was this monster that dealt with the monsters, but his subordinate rejected the idea. talking about Yanan's 12 exploits. The guy dealt with dangerous monsters with just a simple utility knife. It was hard to believe. The doors on one side of the hall began to crack. The first damned one was glad that his partner had succeeded. The laboratory system warned of an energy overload. It was necessary to reboot and then update Windows. The worker was interested in what exactly was happening, because such power was not characteristic of a person. It was more like a beast or a monster. The protagonist's girlfriend could not believe that the young man injected himself with the developed potion, but the brain in the jar said that it was all true. It was something completely new, like a seasonal McDonald's menu. The guy took into account past experience and embodied it in a new guise. The captain hurried to take a position. He did not know who would become friend or foe in a few moments. He couldn't believe that a person was capable of this. Perhaps this superintelligence made a mistake and ordinary zombies walked out the door. Just a few seconds later, Yanan himself appeared from the opening. His eyes were green, like the emeralds of the inhabitants of the Minecraft world. The soldiers mistook him for being cursed and decided to eliminate the threat, but he easily dodged this action. Like a shadow, a moment later, finding himself behind the back of the captain and his men, the young man showed that he was not their enemy as long as they did not stand in the way. Everything happened so quickly that even Quicksilver from the X-People could not keep up with him. A moment later, the guy found himself next to his partner. After what he saw, the brain in the jar was finally convinced that if before absorbing the power, the guy was at level A+, now he is SS. The more the cursed power is in the young man's body, the stronger physically he will become in the process. Due to the presence of stability, the strength takes root more slowly. Now he can only use about 30% of the total value. But even what is available now goes beyond what is known. It seems the guy has become a real demon. How great are his capabilities? The protagonist's girlfriend quickly realized what exactly the guy was doing, but even in theory it sounded very risky. She wondered if they would receive the same power. The young man explained that sitting still and waiting for fate was a disastrous proposition. He wanted to save people, but the government decided otherwise, so by becoming his ally, he would have to become an enemy of the world. Yanan decided to give his follower advice. She should not follow his path just as Naruto needs to follow his own line. Chen Yiwei was ready to take the side of the main character because she saw with her own eyes how the country abandoned the people. This is not why she devoted herself to science. She wants to change the whole world so that it does not repeat its past mistakes. Even though the boy preferred to be a lone swordsman, it was wrong to refuse the help of such an experienced and loyal assistant. The girl turned out to be much braver than he had previously thought. She should be an example. Similar to Alan Walker smiled. The test tube monster warned the young man that this path did not lead to a better life, but now it was the only solution. To motivate the captain, he said that very soon he would be able to make a serum that would allow everyone to get a quirk. Everyone had to decide for themselves whether to gain power or find themselves on the other side of the barricade. Now the Hunger Games begin. The captain asked what is the probability of accepting the gift and remaining in himself at the same time. The main character thought about it. After a couple of seconds, the young man replied that now the probability of success is about 80%, but the risk is justified as it seems to him now. The man was well versed in various games, he loved Risk, and he also loved the Squid Game. He decided to join. Following the captain and his subordinates, they decided that the medicine would cause the birth of a new world of superhumans. It seems that now the local Avengers have been assembled. It remains to decide on the goals for the future of their resistance army. By acting recklessly, they would greatly reduce the chances of success. First of all, it was worth finding that zombie. This was especially important. The laboratory worker knew the complex very well. She could easily lead Yanan to the shelter, which would increase the chance of success. The guy's partner was sure that the girl would interfere, but she said that Google Navigator never fails. The young man doubted, but the brunette's arguments sounded more than convincing and logical. Perhaps he should agree. Yanan agreed to take another person with her, but on the condition that she would help herself out of trouble. It's worth hurrying because they don't have much time. The undead are very lucky because they don't need sleep. The closest path was made through the ventilation. It was worth copying Springtrap's attack style, although no one would block the path. Unlike normal passages, the ventilation ducts were not damaged, which means everything should go smoothly. The girl was thinking about what they should do, because soon the city would begin to be reconstructed and get rid of the remnants of the curse. The power of Tony Stark's development from the world of biology was incredible, but it is unlikely to be enough to win. Yanan explained that the first sample he used on himself was only a test, which means that the next ones will be stronger. In addition, the zombie they are following now has super strength without drugs. He is on the level of Vastalord. In theory, one person can have 2, 3 powers. Anyone can receive it with certain preparation. Making their way further through the ventilation, the guys came across a strange fog that filled the passage, like a reaction of dry ice with water. The exit from the mine was blocked by a strange plant, like an escaped bush from PVZ. with mouths and thorns along its entire length. It was worth being more careful. It is unknown how dangerous an injection from this mutant bush grown using GMOs could turn out to be. The young man came up with a plan, a little adventurous, but without such an element, it would have been too boring no matter how you looked at the situation. He decided to use the plant's vines like a bungee jump to get to the core without any difficulty. A monster tree lived on the street outside the building, probably the son of Trent from Dota. Otherwise, its roots would not have been so strong. His partner was in a difficult situation, so Yenan should have rushed and saved him, putting an end to it. The demon hunter did not plan to drag out the battle. A couple of blows from the flying thunder god would be enough for such a weed. Once outside, the guys noticed drones flying around. They probably should have rushed with their first move. The brunette was sure that this is exactly what the hellish paradise looks like, which they now have to confront. At the same time, a conference with the heads of various companies and organizations began. There was a lot of press. Everyone was worried about the issue of the city of F. One of the chairmen said that the decision had been made, and in 3 days the final cleanup of the area would begin. It seems that almost everyone accepted this, but no one even guessed what awaited them under the shell. Maintaining your position at this meeting was not easy. You have to make concessions to those more powerful. The man sitting next to him was pleased with how his colleague's attitude towards the situation had changed. Fortunately, a warning had been given. The devastation only intensified. The city began to look more and more like a meteoric quarter, where the dark side of humanity reigns. The evening sky looked like a painting by some popular artist, the color of late autumn and the first step in a plan for revenge. Standing on the street, the main character and his new nakama were amazed at how much everything had changed in a matter of hours. The girl was interested in whether they had a chance to change something, but if they wanted, there would always be an opportunity, one way or another. Empty houses without inhabitants, a lot of damage and silence. Now this is how the city of F looks, while other people are having fun. However, this was only the beginning. Soon the entire city would look as if it was inhabited only by ghosts and phantoms. The mutant Yenan was looking for was in an apartment nearby, so it was worth hurrying before the military drones found her. The Qingjiang River was turbulent this night. The students who were previously sitting on the beach are no longer so naive. The situation has worsened. The gloomy city more and more resembled the heavenly fortress of Aincrad. It's a pity that Kirito won't help cope with the boss. That night, the water near the people was not calm. Naivety and laziness became the cause of the upcoming eclipse. Believing that the city of F is an exceptional case, people have forgotten about safety, and now the red moon is coming. The light of the full moon will allow the monsters to reach their targets. The invasion promises to be very serious, as if you were playing Terraria. The wall that was supposed to hold back the undead turned out to be too small for the Death Knights who were gradually creeping up. Even the walls of the Bricks fortress could not hold back such a horde. The quiet and dangerous approach to the city of D. Another party was being held in City D. There was even Skrillex. City F was upstream, which means the monsters were nearby. The friends discussed the expert Yenan, who claimed that the curse would fall on all cities, but now everything would be over. Everyone was having fun until the light went out. The guests were unhappy with such inconveniences because it was a holiday. The man who organized this grilled ribs eating tournament decided to check the situation himself. Having walked forward a little, he realized that the very zombies they were talking about online were standing on his lawn. Remembering the movie Forrest Gump, the guy used all his stamina to try to escape from the dead people who appeared. However, his reaction was too slow for him to realize when he was in the clutches of the enemy. Now it was the end. What the main character was talking about earlier began. The situation began to worsen, and it was better to take action as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the city of F, there was practically nothing visible. After sunset, the dead are usually more active. You had to be more careful. The main character and his team slowly moved forward. It was impossible to frighten away such a valuable specimen. Studying it would provide many benefits. A Guardians of the Galaxy collector would give a lot of money to get one, but today is not his day. Remembering the ninjutsu lessons she took during her advanced training, the girl tried to cross the street unnoticed. The laboratory worker was in such a hurry to complete the task that she did not notice how she was attacked from behind. The girl let her guard down too much, so she didn't even notice how she found herself in a dangerous situation. Fortunately, the young man managed to see the zombie. The main character's attack was incredibly fast. Even the speed of the wave from Kunka's W was not that high. Perhaps no one in the world would be able to react to it. The zombies did not attack only the main character, so he had to protect his partner.